cold. So incredibly cold. And so much regret. Gary didn't know it was possible to feel like every muscle in his body was slowly freezing over, and the blood pumping through his veins was more akin to a thick, unhappy sludge. Where he came from, these climates were unheard of. Winter months were spent inside a dome of solace, artificial lights cascading down on his scales and the soothing warmth of a rock beneath his belly. The deep trenches of snow he was currently slithering through were a far cry from his home, a place he wished deeply he could return to. He wished for his family huddling together watching snowflakes tumble outside their burrows, a quiet laughter, the sun beating almost uncomfortably against his back, and his favorite rock he slept on every morning. Gary had no choice, though. He had no choice but to keep going, keep trudging along the ice and spindly fingers of hell washing into his spine. The police were surely hot on his trail, and here, Tundra Town, if you remember correctly, was what he was forced to dive into to save his tail. One thing he could be thankful for about his reptilian self were his blue scales. Not entirely perfect for camouflage, but better than black or some other obnoxiously bright color, trying to desperately hide in waves of white. At the end, though, there was no hope. Gary could barely move. He flopped down, out of breath and out of energy, acknowledging the slight glimmer of yellow and orange cupping him in bitter-sweet relief. It was seldom what he was used to. Really, it teased him, made him think he was safe with the tiniest hint of heat. Gary didn't know what was worse, getting captured or freezing to death. He had heard such horrific stories of what mammals would do to reptiles like him. Stories of snagging their throats with shock collars, muzzling them, removing their venom glands, or instead breaking their fangs clean off. One of those had been true so far. Gary coiled around himself and poked gingerly at the still sore area of where his fang had once been. His precious fang. They were everything a snake had to defend themselves. Of course, Gary would never harm anyone by injecting venom into their bodies, but if necessary, he would bite. Now, he didn't even have that ability at its full strength. The world was shades of blue, pure blue. At least, it seemed like he had lost those policemen. And yet, Gary didn't feel accomplished. He couldn't even shiver to maintain his body heat. All his remaining energy ended up a sheet of thick ice. He huddled his nose into the wrappings of his body. Was this how he was going to die? A failure to his family? His species? He had promised them, and instead he only became a disgrace to snakes all around, and trapped in an environment he possibly couldn't escape from. If it were possible, he would be crying now, letting tiny icicles bead down his snowy cheeks. Gary wasn't usually a snake that gave up. It was just so cold. Hello? A voice sounded nearby, and Gary shot up out of his huddle, falling back into a pile of stinging white dust. Staring down at him was a large cat, a species he wasn't familiar with, in lighter wear for weather such as this. He supposed mammals probably didn't have to worry too much about instantaneous hypothermia. Colored in a series of different shades of brown and cream, they were suited with a dark blue crop top and matching shorts alongside multiple gold bands adorning their thick set of arms. Their amber eyes watched with a keen curiosity before narrowing and taking a few steps back, the snow crunching beneath their bare paws. Gary tried to worm away, but his entire self gave in under one small wiggle. The cat glanced around, massive puffy tail swishing anxiously. It appeared they were thinking about something, their bushy eyebrows mingling into a tight pinch of concentration. Gary's little heart pounded in his chest. Their claws shimmered under the light, and their lips had pulled back to reveal a fresh set of carnivore teeth, perfect for chowing down on a frozen dinner like the one set in front of them. However, after taking another glance past their shoulder, they murmured a quick, "You shouldn't be out here." Using their tail, they twisted and gave it a shake, brushing some sparkling pellets off of Gary's scales. Gary braced himself despite the gentle gesture, instinctively wanting to curl back up. Instead, massive, fuzzy hands were at his sides, taking him into a pair of bulky arms. The cat proceeded to pick up Gary with a small grunt, trying to wrap him around their shoulders gingerly. It was harder than it looked considering how huge this damn snake was. Gary paid no mind to it, though. Instantly, he melted. Finally, warmth. The sweet release of warmth. Their fur was as soft as the feathers of a newborn duckling. Paws ever so tender wherever they touched, and the blood flowing through them left trails of orange licking against his blue. He closed his eyes and pressed his face into their side. Little hairs ticked his nostrils and subsequent pit organs next to them. In a matter of seconds, all the cold seeped into a boiling pool of sweet, sweet lava. He could have sworn this was heaven for a moment, and the lovely mammal lifting him to the clouds was an angel in disguise. After all, what animal other than a reptile would look at him and not scream or immediately run away? Gary could sense the soothing emotions curling around him like his mother on a stormy night. Light, a crackling fire, a cozy atmosphere pelting him similar to the fresh sparkle of rain, the delicious smell of what reminded him of a home-cooked meal, and a heavy weight suddenly resting on his metaphorical shoulders. Peeking a look, Gary noticed the brightly patterned blanket taut on his noodle-shaped figure. It wasn't as nice as the fur he had been engulfed in, but it was certainly better than whatever laid outside. The area he had been taken to was an interesting abode. A flurry of flashing sunny colors painted every color, especially the one where he assumed a fire was currently raging. All the lights were dimmed, leaving it to be the main source of not only heat, but life. Apart from that, stars twinkled above from the ceiling tops. Gary rose and stared with wide eyes at the multiple, glimmering pieces of what he perceived as glass hanging by thin threads to create a glorious picture of a galaxy, all in this one animal's living room. Gary loved the stars, although heaven was quite a humble sight from what had been passed down in his family.